Hello, welcome back to Plat Chat Valorant. We got ourselves another region preview, this time for the Asia-Pacific region. Is that what you're supposed to call this collection of places? Korea, Southeast Asia, Japan? I don't know. We're going to refer to them as their own names from now on, though. I want to start the way that we've started all the others as well, as talking what is the storyline of the region overall. For me, it's about Valorant taking hold in a way that Counter-Strike didn't. I think that is the predominant story that has been there since the very beginning when it comes to Valorant. Can Riot hook the Asian audience and, I mean, when it releases on China, the Chinese audience on top of these areas? The viewership has been pretty decent, but you can't just... it's not going to be popular if the teams aren't competitive, right? So I think it's important that at least the regions are able to take something away from this where they can develop and draw in extra eyeballs to their region. Is that fair?
100%.
Yeah.
I think that is the big, it's like not even about the teams almost. It's not even about the players almost. For this overarching type of thing that a lot of people are watching for is, can we capture the Asian audiences? Because specifically the Chinese audience and Korean, China's not here, but the Korean audience has been one of the reasons why League of Legends has kind of ballooned, why StarCraft has ballooned in the past. They're a major esports capital in a sense that no TAC FPS has really been able to, I mean, outside of the Asia specific ones, like, was it Sudden Attack or Crossfire or something like that?
Sudden Attack,
Crossfire is popular.
Outside of those, nothing has taken a hold from the Western world. That is a major one.
Korea has a long legacy of being excellent at esports. If they culturally attach themselves to an esport and end up having a large player base, they will be good at it. It is simply a matter of time. I'm not sure whether we've reached that stage in Valorant yet. I don't think we have a large enough player base in Korea so that we have hit the threshold of there will inevitably be an excellent Korean team or multiple excellent Korean teams. What do you guys think? Is NUTURN this? Is NUTURN the real deal when it comes to the legacy of Korea getting inserted into Valorant right now?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, it's pretty obviously not, right? Like, for a while, Vision Strikers literally just lost. Like, they were so dominant, they didn't lose a match for what was the final streak? Like,
107 or something?
107, 150, what was some ridiculous number, you know? Like, a ridiculous number of matches that no other team had ever done in the history of esports, essentially, you know? And like, so at this point, NUTURN, they're new kids on the block when it comes to the Korean Valorant, but this is not the final form. And if anything, to me, refining your point even further of like hooking Asia, it's specifically getting Korea into it, awakening Korea to be an esport juggernaut in Valorant, like they are in every other esport they participate in. And that's like the big thing is like, is NUTURN going to walk away from this looking good, and will Korea wake up as a region?
And NUTURN are also going to be branded, I feel, in Iceland for a lot of casual fans as the Vision Striker Slayers. Because NUTURN themselves were not that popular of a team outside of Korea. They're a pretty well-known team in Korea. They've done well for a while. But the global narrative was always about Vision Strikers, about the cool strats that they used, the tactical way that they approached the game. And so I think the idea now coming into Iceland is, oh shit, these guys beat Vision Strikers, rather than it being on NUTURN's own merits. So what can you tell me about this team? What is the real true story of NUTURN? If we leave Vision Strikers out of it, because they're just a side story now, what is NUTURN's essence?
I think they've always been that team that everybody else is like, this is the second best team in Korea. I think it was like very murky around First Strike, but as soon as Stage 1 started, they kicked it into high gear, and I think almost went slightly a different path than the rest of Korea, like teams like F4Q, like teams like TNL and stuff like that. They tried to make their own identity, and since then they have been the second best. And even at Masters 1, you would say second best because they lost, but even like, remember, we were talking about how like we were kind of underwhelmed by Vision Strikers at that point. It already looked like the shift had started to happen during that Masters 1
Definitely.
run and the finals, even though they lost, what was it, 3-2? A close
Yes,
one.
it was a 3-2 game. Yeah.
But they've only gotten better, whereas Vision Strikers has gotten worse. Some of the other teams are getting better, but this team skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Now I feel like they are a team that is not just the Korean mold, and they are their own identity overall. And they do feel like potentially they've learned a lot from global competition.
I love that you brought up that they were trying to craft their own identity, because that's absolutely what it felt like to me. And they even started setting the meta in Korea as well. Teams were not playing the stuff that Vision Strikers were playing. Teams were playing the stuff that NUTURN was playing, with especially that composition that they run on Bind, which is their Breach, Sova, Jett, Raze, and then an Omen comp, where it's you drop the Sentinel, keep the double duelist, keep the Breach and the Sova together. It's the same composition that FaZe had so much success playing when it came to their run in Masters 1 over in North America as well. And they were running a composition that NUTURN at that point had been running for quite a while. And NUTURN are still running it on Bind, which is their best map. And they set the meta on that map when it came to Korean Valorant too. So this definitely is a team with its own identity. And especially, I love to focus on that Bind map because they have like a 90% plus win rate on it. The strats they crafted, the trap plays that they run. This is a team that's very unique. I don't see another team like this at Iceland, where they have a lot of set plays, and they'll run them on defense, whether that's a trap play. If you come up long, you'll get flashed and or get stunned. If you walk up sand, you'll get crunched on because they'll play through the teleporters and play really aggressively on defense. They really have put a lot of thought into their game and added a bunch in a Vision Strikers-esque kind of way, but in a much nicer pattern. I mean, here, where they run a Showers crunch by putting their Breach through the teleporter and then ulting Showers. It's so cool. They're a really cool team to watch.
And I think this is like the thing that it is going to be the thing that helps redefine them potentially is if people can just see them play Bind. I feel like when we go to Iceland and we can see NUTURN play Bind and it doesn't get banned, people will be able to redefine their expectations of them a bit. Be like, wow, this is really cool, right? Like they're doing something that not a lot of teams are doing. And it's also going to be their ability to make these prep strats that will probably give them some chances, I think, because they do have very strong players, right? Like, I mean, when you look at like Lakia and Suggest and even like Allow and stuff, like they have very, very strong players on this team. They have players that can compete with tier 1 players, I think. It's just overall, like when you look at how they currently play Valorant, they don't really seem like they don't really ever seem like they're on the same level except for like Bind, but that's just because they have such innovative play styles. They have such like a pre-prep strategy. And it's not like the Sentinel style where they're very flexible and adaptive and they take different areas of the map and rotate out. It's not like the FPX style where they have a whole different comp for each match, and especially with even the same map even. And then they like have a whole new conditioning style like each round to round, and set up a whole different set of executes. Like it's just they're very focused in what they're good at, and it's particularly based around Bind. But if they can apply some amazing other strats to some of their other map pool, then I feel like with the players they have available, they could make a decent like dent at the event.
Yeah.
I like the fact that like while they have crafted their own identity, they really still have that Korean flair where they have the set plays that you're talking about,
definitely.
right? These deep executes that they start from a pretty far back area. They're not really like it's not like they're starting from a position of map control or strength. They do have these sets where they take all their utility, they take all their breach flashes, and they get their jets deep down. And I don't think teams are prepared for that. I don't think other regions are really fleshing out their full set plays and executes to that level and that amount of them. It's always so far, and they will pull it out multiple times. That's why I consider this team a big threat to teams from EU, actually. Whereas like, the EU style is very, let's play map control and then let's have good utility usage on our executes, but it's never really like let's full execute from the start, except for Fnatic. But I think that could be a danger point for the EU teams.
Okay. I also think, though, that the set plays aspect would definitely be a detriment to them over time, the deeper they get into the tournament, because something that I've noticed while watching them domestically in the Challengers finals is that they seemed extraordinarily readable. They were running the same kind of stuff over and over and over again, and while I don't think that's going to be a problem at the beginning of the tournament because they've had a 2-week break and they'll probably be cooking up some hot shit in the lab, I think they're going to be cooking up some delightful new set plays to come into Iceland with. That book can't be that deep because you've got to pull them out against Sharks. That's an opponent that you have to respect if you're NUTURN. Then you've got to pull them out against, who do they even play against next? Is it Liquid?
I mean, it'll probably be like Liquid. Whoever wins the game between Liquid and whoever's coming up from that match.
Right.
The Raccoon match.
And then in the lower bracket is not going to be like kind to them either. So every game is going to get more and more dangerous for Liquid, and they're for NUTURN, and they're going to have to show more and more of their strat book. So I think this is a team that they don't really look like they've demonstrated the adaptability and the vary of styles and the reactive play to be able to make a super deep run. But I think they're really dangerous, especially at the beginning, because I think they'll have some hot set plays ready to go. Balla, talk to me about Solo. Explain to me the history of this player, because if you haven't been involved in Counter-Strike or haven't been paying attention to Korea as well, you might not realize that there's a true legacy, historic player on this team too, along with a bunch of other up-and-coming fraggers.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably saw the news of Glow retiring from Vision Strikers. Solo was his teammate for some of those teams of the 13-year career of Glow. Like, so Solo has been there, if not longer than Glow. He's been playing in 1.6 forever. He was probably I'd say the biggest star from Korea in 1.6, with the Western like appeal and the people who actually were paying attention to international events. Sorry, what?
Was he an APA at the time? I thought he was.
He was an APA. He was an APA. He was the basically star opera, actually probably considered by some like one of the best mechanical operas at a certain period in time. Right. Did very well. I think they ended up splitting, and I don't think he was on like the teams that really made the push. But I'd have to check my facts. From there, he went to CS:GO, and he's been playing since then. But now he's the IGL type of like the boomer IGL on the team, and he's continuing, and he is still fragging out, which is absolutely impressive.
Yeah, extremely impressive. That's another cool storyline as well, to kind of root for a guy that's been involved in the scene for so long and been trying to break through in like a big game. And Valorant could be that. What are our expectations for NUTURN? Where are you thinking? If you were going to like power rank them or talk about how deep they could get in a tournament, what are you thinking, Avast? Where's NUTURN's expectations here if we're being reasonable for Iceland?
I mean, I find it unlikely that I find it like they do have like a potentially decent shot simply because I think there is a possibility for them, like a strong possibility for them to beat Sharks. As long as they can get to bind and they can play bind, I think there's a strong possibility they can beat Sharks. Now that's just because maybe I'm not huge on Sharks. But I do find that NUTURN, they have solid players on there. Their bind is incredible. And I feel like they just need to cook up something great and they can get through Sharks. Now, then the real question becomes like, how do they go on past that, right? Because like the more we see from them, the more teams are going to have their playbook, like you said. And to me, I think NUTURN would definitely be getting above like the X10 crazy Raccoon squads, and like the Sharks. But I have a hard time them getting beyond like that. What is that? Like the 7th place or so?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if NUTURN were able to get past Sharks and lost to Liquid, they'd drop down in the bracket, and I think they would end up playing against Sentinels or maybe Fnatic or one of those teams that has dropped out of the upper quarters. So, or is it the team that drops out of the upper semis? Either way, they'd probably be going up against what we would consider to be a tier 1 team. At that point, what's the percentage chance of NUTURN sneaking an upset result? What are your feelings, both of you, of like, if they played against the top 4 teams here, how much of an upset would it be for NUTURN to win?
Like a 20. I have like a 20%.
Okay.
Well, that's a lot, actually.
I think so.
I feel like that's a lot. I think probably like 15%, 10%. Like I don't think it's very, very likely, but I do think that there is a chance. It's not 0%. there is a
Yeah,
chance.
sure.
I think it is stronger against the EU teams for the reasons I said before.
All right. That's pretty cool. They're like a dark horse pick as well. And a lot of people have high expectations of them too because of that legacy that Korea has had. I just want to touch on that slightly towards the end as well. Do you think that Korean fans are going to be happy with NUTURN's performance? This is a really hard question to answer because we don't speak Korean, and so it's hard to know like whether the Korean fans expect their region to be great. But I know from talking to like the Korean casters in Korea, people like Achilleos, that he speaks very highly of the Korean teams, and he thinks that they're good. He doesn't think they're going to win the entire thing, but I could imagine that with the legacy, a lot of people might have that opinion. I think there's people in the community that think or thought that Vision Strikers would be favorites for Iceland if they made it.
There's a lot of those guys out there. Just the people riding the Overwatch Korea success and the League of Legends, like they dominate every single game type of beat. And to be honest, like I actually wanted to talk about like the mechanics aspect of it as well. Like a lot of people are like, oh, the Koreans have insane mechanics, and then on the other flip side, there's like a bunch of people who are like, no, that's what's lacking from them. It's their aim. It's some of the mechanical level of the players. So that'll be interesting to watch too.
Yeah, that will be interesting to try and see. All right, let's move on to the next team that has the most Korean players in it outside of NUTURN. It's Crazy Raccoons. They've got 2 Korean players, Munchkin and Medusa, who are playing alongside a Spanish. Where am I getting Spanish from? Japanese core of the team, which is sorry, I said Crazy Raccoons. It's not. It's Crazy Raccoon.
Crazy Raccoon. They are
Singular. One batshit insane raccoon. That's
one crawfish, one raccoon.
Right, let's start here then. Japan has been hyped up. It doesn't have a big PC culture generally. They're not big into PC games. They're fantastically talented at fighting games and other things that go more towards that aspect of gaming,
arcade
but not particularly PC tactical FPS games. Japan has not been a big hitter in any of those. But the player base numbers, the viewership numbers have actually been pretty good for Japan. And it's got a thriving scene with, regular occasional tournaments happening between the top teams. And we've seen the absolute Jupiter play in some of these big tournaments previously as well. And now this team, Crazy Raccoon, is coming out of Japan with 2 Korean players, one of whom is going to be shot calling for them, a former Overwatch League player called Munchkin, who's shot calling for them despite the fact that his Japanese is not fluent. What's your overall thoughts on this team? How good is Japanese Valorant right now? Are they going to be able to make a dent?
I think it's the roughest of the regions currently.
Okay.
I think it's, why it's not here to agree with me on this necessarily, because I know you also have your doubts about X10.
Yeah.
But when I watched them play, I felt like this is a team that they just don't. They're walking around the map taking duels essentially, and there's like low utility usage. There's low concise executes. There's very low conditioning. Like it's just all the things that you would expect. You just don't see very often, and it feels like, when I talked about the orc brain, like Munchkin, a player in Overwatch that was extremely hyped actually. If you had paid attention to his career, he had some flashes of brilliance, and then he's moved on to Valorant now after not solidifying that. And like here, it feels like when I watch Crazy Raccoon, I feel like I'm watching not even that Munchkin's like the best player, but I feel like I'm just seeing like someone taking aim duels a lot. Because honestly, Neth is probably their most consistent player for this squad. I'm not huge on them. I feel like I think they're going to be the ones that struggle the most here, just because I don't think their grasp compared to everyone else, every other team is like very high.
Okay. Well, what do you think of Balla? Do you agree with that take?
Yeah, I think I could be even slightly harsher. I think just generally with the context of Japan as a attack FPS community and culture, and the fact that Crazy Raccoons is playing in that, and they honestly kind of struggled their way through their bracket. Like a lot of 3-map series, a lot of close games, a lot of overtime, stuff like that. The same point I kind of made with what was it? Crew dominating their region. here Crazy Raccoons struggled through their region, and that tells me that they're not as good. And I still have my same preconceived notions about Japan as a whole. I
Okay.
will say though that like the point about them trying to like just go take aim duels, like yeah, it does feel like when you're watching this series, particularly the grand finals, both teams are just trying to skill diff each other, which makes it actually way harder to tell whether these teams like are good mechanically because you have no idea of the different contexts of both of them. Like, are they both just bad or are they both actually just insane? Because obviously they're playing against each other toe to toe. It feels like they have decent level mechanics, not utility usage, which affects your kind of mechanics. Utility usage is really, really poor and lacking. But we'll have to see. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they could just phase their way, I guess. That under that like under I don't know, the way that you can't really tell, it makes it kind of sketch
Right.
for me. I don't know, but I do think that they're worse.
Say that, Ball. I don't even think it's fair to FaZe to say that because FaZe at least like had moments where they like use utility well to like do a site hit, right? I just don't see that with Crazy Raccoon.
Okay.
Sure.
So we're talking not just underdogs, but pretty severe underdogs in any game they come up against here. I mean, I struggle to disagree with the points that you're raising. When you look, it does feel like very basic. I will say, I think it's cool that Japan has been offered, not just offered, that makes it sound like it's patronizing, but they've kind of deserved their spot here because of the excitement of the region with Valorant, right? That's one of the reasons that it's been supported so much is because the region was excited to participate in this game and has a thriving community. So I'm hoping from Iceland that this team is able to get experience, that some of the Japanese players maybe get incentivized to form a super team, and they can try and do something a little more like what Crew has done over in LATAM, where there's one team that's significantly better than the region as a whole. And that, I think, will inspire, the rest to kind of rise up to that level as well. Crazy Raccoons do not feel like that, though. They don't feel like the dominant team. I wouldn't even say they have the best player in the region. I think that's Laz, who plays for Absolute Jupiter as well, who is Japanese. He's not a Korean player that's playing in that region. I think this is going to be a really rough tournament for them, but I hope they take away some learning points too. What more to be said? I mean, some key players to watch. Munchkin, Neth, are those the kind of names that you'd be looking at?
I think I'd add Zephyr, maybe.
Right.
I think Neth and Zephyr to me were the like most outstanding. I mean, it's kind of easy for me to just say the Jett player, just because like when you are low utility, it's just like the Jett player ends up being one of the guys who stands out because he's always spending a dash or something like that. But I still felt slightly underwhelming with the dash choices, but his knives are nuts, so there's that.
Okay, fair enough. If we're talking about expectations then for Crazy Raccoons, I think we've kind of already alluded towards it, but to put a specific key on it, what are you guys expecting? What's the expectations for Crazy Raccoons overall, or Crazy Raccoon overall?
I have last. I have a last place finish, I think.
Okay.
For Crazy Raccoon. Anything more than that, I could see them maybe finishing above. Theoretically, like depending on how the bracket works out, X10, right? Like maybe.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Okay. All right. What about you, Balla?
Yeah, I have them last as well, unfortunately. I think a good showing for them would be if honestly I would say like if one of their players just looks phenomenal, like in a skill level, like if he's able to go toe to toe with some of the guys. But other than that, I don't see them putting up a significant amount of rounds or anything like that. I honestly think that this is one of the teams that has a hard chance of getting 13-0'd like multiple times in a series.
Yeah, they're playing against, their first game is against version 1. So yeah, that's already a decent level team. We don't exactly know what to expect of version 1 with their substitute player, but yeah, this is a team that has a long way to go, I think, before they're at the tier 1 level. I personally though rate them as slightly higher than you guys. I think they are a better team than X10. I think that I would even say that they look a little significantly better than X10, just in terms of the pace at which they play is slow, extremely slow, but that also means they're not making debilitating mistakes all the time. You know, if you're not doing too much, you're reducing the amount of mistakes that you make. And I think that could be important for them, especially if they're going toe-to-toe. I mean, if they end up playing against X10, which is quite likely if both of them lose their first round games, then it just comes down to whether they can hold off the X10 aggression, I think, and whether they can hold good enough defaults to be able to stop that, or hold good enough side anchoring and support each other well enough to be able to hold it off. All right, let's move on to talking about X10 then, because this team, while Crazy Raccoon is interesting in that they are a Japanese team, and that whole aspect of Japan participating in tactical FPS and being a minor region is cool, the team itself, I don't really have something to like hook onto that's exciting for me to follow Crazy Raccoon. X10 does. I think X10, despite the fact that I think they're going to be going out in last place, and I think even you guys would say they're going out in like 7th to 8th or whatever. I think this team does have a really good hook, and that's Padapan. It's the star Jett player, and the way that they just set him up to go and fuck. They just set him up to, they just send him in. They vomit out their utility. They run in as fast as they can. And Padapan is set loose and unleashed upon the battlefield. And he's good. His mechanical skill is good. He's a fun player to watch. It's a fun team to watch as well. I think it's going to get hard countered by pretty much everything they play against, but there might be some pop-off moments. And at least there's a key to victory there, that they could succeed by Padapan being significantly more skilled than everyone he plays against, I guess. Is that the same impression you guys got when you were watching X10?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. I think that's a cool little fun twist to put on it, because I did have, like, when I watched them, I'm like, okay, yeah, like they actually are trying to play like on meta. They actually are trying to like implement some pretty cool trap plays and like stuff like that. It's just the coordination not necessarily there. Padapan, maybe that's what they're trying to do, right? Set up their star player, which could be really cool. I think down the stretch, he is insane. I just hope that they can get to a stretch. I think if there is a team that's like way overperforming anything, it'd be X10, like way overperforming, but I don't expect it.
Did you see he kicked the slow orb? He body blocked the slow orb by accident. He's been taking tips from Lothar.
Only out of Thailand.
Yeah, it's just you gotta play a little Rocket League there, so you have the intercept, the ball intercept with the slow orb.
Yeah,
that's the new wave.
Body block it. This one is hilarious. Lothar's going to be loving that. That's fantastic. But rounds like that where Padapan just gets 4 kills. Look, here it is. He just kicks it. It's like a football. Here it comes. Wait, boom, there it goes.
What? That thing went far. Yo,
it did. It really did. Like, it completely messed up the placement of the slow orb and stopped him planting the spike. That's really cool.
What?
And completely by accident. And I mean, the clip is just showcasing how good Padapan's mechanics are. But yeah, I think that this team and Crazy Raccoon as well both exist in their own tier towards the bottom of the table. Are those the expectations for everybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wyatt described it best when he felt like X10 feels like Renegades during that early stint where they were like surprising teams in North America by just fucking going ham on site and just running as fast as possible with a very fast burst. That's X10. That's like literally X10. Except now they have Scary as well, who I think is probably their second best player, if not in contention for their best player behind Padapan, who plays like a lot of Viper and Astra, like a lot of controllers for them. And I think he actually understands. I actually think, minus the one terrible Astra wall we talked about in the earlier full episode today, I think he actually has like a decent grasp on the utility and how to use how to play controller and such, especially Astra right now, which is very important.
Yeah.
So I actually think X10 exists on a separate tier than Moon Raccoon, simply because do they wait, not Moon Raccoon. There's too many raccoons. Crazy Raccoon. There's too many raccoons. Crazy Raccoon.
Moon Raccoons are just simply on another planet. So,
yeah, I mean, that's true. And also there's multiple of them versus a singular raccoon.
Yeah.
So
they would always win.
But I do think that X10 actually has like, their burst hits are pretty cool. They have a player to like get in with Padapan, and I think Scary, compared to a lot of the other minor regions, specifically Crazy Raccoon, actually understands Astra and Viper a bit,
right,
and how to get value out of that utility. So I feel like that's why X10 to me just look stronger, even if they don't play slow at all. They only play like with the brake lines cut. But
Sure.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed by Scary's Astra. Like you're saying, coming out of a region that's a minor region, and considering the team doesn't have, I wouldn't say coordination is their strong suit. He is actually still able to find a lot of value from that pick. He's really good with it, actually. He's got great on-the-fly usage.
I just watched the sky flash himself twice.
Yeah, there's a lot of mistakes like that. There's a lot of just individual. It's not just team play mistakes. It's like individual mistakes as well. From
well, that happens in an A too, so it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it does, sure.
You put the Victor Sky.
There was another thing that I wanted to hit on here as well. Avast. We've been talking about Padapan as well, but he's also a player that comes from Overwatch too. Can you give me the short story of Padapan? But as like a little hook for people to dig their teeth into as well, if they're interested.
Pretty much
in
how old is
Padapan
now? Do we know? Is the first question, because I don't remember how old he is now. But in Overwatch, he was like literally like he's like 14, 15, something like that. He was like
now.
Yeah, okay. So he was like 15 in Overwatch. He played Overwatch for about 2 years or so, and moved over to Valorant. And he was like the Thai Pope, I think, because he's Thai, correct? Yeah, and so he was like the Thai hope for Overwatch behind because like he just like was cracked out. He had really good mechanics. He had a lot of hype because he came from a region that wasn't super represented, but he was just too young to play. I mean, he played on a lot of academy teams. He played academy teams in North America and in Europe, under Boston and Paris. So like he played for a while, and everyone had really high expectations for him, but he was just too young to play. You'd have to wait too long to play in Overwatch League, and because of how the regional split works, it was just hard for him to continue to justify like his particular grind at his age. So he moved to Valorant, and it shows how he had such good mechanics, because here in Valorant, he's a crazy duelist player.
Yeah.
And he's just a cracked out young Thai kid that's gonna pop off.
Yeah. He was definitely of the talent where you would have expected him to probably be able to get into Overwatch League had he been of age, and would have had a career playing a totally different game. But now this opportunity has been opened up to him to play in Valorant, and he's a little older. He's like 3-4 years older than he was when he was playing Overwatch, which is just ridiculous because he's still such a young developing talent. So I think this guy's really fun to watch as well. I'm certainly going to be rooting for him. I hope that they're able to do a little more than I expect of them, but this is definitely one of those minor regions that is going to get the short end of the stick when it comes to a tournament like Iceland, I think, overall. What do you...
They'll be like...
Yeah,
I think this is a team that has... I don't know, like, if they do well, honestly, just the fact, like, I do encourage everybody to go watch their qualifying moment. I think it was one of the more touching ones out of everywhere, every region. Like, it's a more emotional kind of story for them, because it is like a small team from Thailand, like getting a shot to play on a big stage for $600,000 internationally against other teams. So I think people are going to be rooting for them, especially their community, and I hope that they can come out with some successes to go on from.
Yeah, and remember as well that once we get into the interregional stage of Valorant, there are going to be opportunities for North American teams, European teams, whatever, to pick up people from minor regions. The world isn't always going to be segmented into regions like this. At least I hope that Valorant doesn't always do something like this where they region lock so heavily. But even so, there's still 2 spots available for people outside of your home region, even within the current system. So if you're able to acquire visas, then it would be cool for a Thai team, even if they didn't do very well, for one of their players to look like a star and look like a potential prospect for the future to get picked up or imported into North America and go on to a tier 2 team that could do something. These are all real crucial things to keep in mind as well when you watch any of these Asian teams and any of the teams from any of the other minor regions as well, is that success isn't only defined by team success, but also individual players popping off and getting a chance at being able to play in bigger regions too. I'm rooting for them. I hope they do well. I hope they do better than expected. But that is Asia in a nutshell. And that's our final region as well. So that's us. That's your brief recap of all of the regions that are heading into Iceland, broken down too. I'm going to offer up the question that I normally do towards the end of these as well. How are you feeling about Asia overall as it ranks compared to the other regions? I mean, we've already kind of explained it on the other one that Asia would be by default the weaker region, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement there. I think it would be. This is just like the wake up moment, hopefully for Asia to like set them on the path to being like really good in the future.
Yeah.
The
I
catalyst.
think we're hoping that there is a catalyst for Asia to blow up because again, that was the key point for Valorant success down the line is if they can tap into these Asian markets. And I don't know if this will have a big influence on it, but it could. So,
okay, very good. Well, we will catch you later on. You can tune into our stream on Monday. We'll see you then.